Hi book lovers, welcome back to my channel. I wanted to talk about some recent romance books that I read and enjoyed, some recent favorites that I've read that are available on Kindle Unlimited, or at least as of now, these books are available on KU. I know a lot of us are KU readers, and I wanted to highlight some KU books that I read in the past few months, so January through March. I know my wrap-ups are long, so this would probably make it easier to filter through the books that I actually enjoyed reading. Hopefully you enjoyed this kind of video. If you do, I will have to continue making more of these. Before I get into my KU favorites, I do want to share the sponsor for today's video. Today's video is sponsored by Book of the Month. It is a monthly book box subscription service that is perfect for readers. They curate a selection of 5 to 7 new hardcover releases in a variety of genres. For the month of May, there are 6 titles to choose from, and you can join Book of the Month and get your first book for $9.99 using the code GOMAY. Their mission is to promote new and upcoming authors, and they want to help you discover these books. And the best thing about Book of the Month is that it is risk-free, so you can choose to skip a month if you don't feel like getting any of that month's selections. And here are the titles for May, the 6 books that you can choose from. Breathless by Amy McCulloch. This is a thriller set on a mountain. Yerba Buena by Nina LaCour. It's a star-crossed love story about 2 women who meet at this glamorous restaurant called Yerba Buena. Heart of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This would be my pick because I have enjoyed Abby Jimenez. It's a contemporary romance between an older heroine who comes from a prestigious family and a younger hero who comes from a small town. Darling Girl by Liz Michalski is a dark, modern-day magical retelling of Peter Pan. Take My Hand by Dolan Perkins Valdez. This is a historical fiction about a young black nurse set in post-segregation Alabama. And The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas. This one is a supernatural suspense debut set after the Mexican War of Independence. And in addition, Book of Night by Holly Black is one of the add-ons for May. It's Holly Black's adult debut, and it's a modern dark fantasy. So those are the selections for the month of May. Don't forget you can join Book of the Month and get your first book for $9.99 using code GOMAY. Link and code will be down in my description, so be sure to check it out. A big thank you again to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. And back to my video. The first book on my list is by an all-time favorite author, so I'm not surprised that this became an instant favorite. It is Falls Boys by Penelope Douglas. This is the first book in the Hellbent series, the first standalone in the Hellbent series, which is a spin-off of the Fall Away series, one of my all-time favorite new adult romance series. This book and this whole series, honestly, has been a long time coming, and it did not disappoint. I loved it so much. Hawk and Aro were amazing. It was like the perfect bad girl, good boy kind of dynamic. I will say it's like a weird kind of new adult romance where it's not really high school, but not really college either, because Hawk has just graduated high school, and Aro had to drop out of high school to take care of her family. These two are from rival towns and rival schools. Aro is from Weston, which is a very poor community, and Hawk, who is Jax and Juliet's son, he of course grew up in Shelburne Falls, which is a much wealthier city. So there's a little bit of rivalry between these two, but then Hawk and Aro have to unite together and work together after they almost get arrested. And while these two slowly fall for each other, it's almost like a slow burn. I want to say like the romance does move pretty slowly, especially in the first half of the book, but then maybe around 60% it starts to really speed up and amp up. But while Aro and Hawk are falling for each other, they do have to come up with a plan to take down that police officer. So there's some suspense, a little bit of mystery, a little action involved, which makes this book really exciting. I mean, it was pretty much everything that I wanted in a Hellbent book. I was just so happy to be back in this world, in this town and family. I loved seeing the original Fall Away gang, this time as parents. Like the scenes with Jared had me cracking up like crazy. I don't know why, they were so funny, but I have missed him. But I thought Penelope Douglas did an incredible job with the second generation, this first couple. Like they really were able to stand out from their parents. They had their own unique storyline, their unique dynamic. I loved reading about the other second generation characters whose books I am dying for. So this was a fantastic book. Whether or not you've read the Fall Away series, I do highly recommend it. Next on my list is Blockshot by Kennedy Ryan. I feel like I've talked about this book a lot, but I will 100% be talking even more about this book throughout this year because I freaking love this book with my whole heart. Honestly, I'm not sure why it took me so long to read this book, to read this series, but I fell so hard for Jared and Banner. It's a standalone book in the Hoop series. It's a second book, and I did read the series out of order, but I don't regret it because this was amazing. If you love obsessed alpha heroes who would do anything to have the heroine, you will love Jared. I mean, is it any surprise that I ended up loving this one? No. Like, this book has as much of a morality change insane kind of hero as you can get without this book being paranormal or dark. Like, Jared is completely obsessed and head over heels for Banner for good reason, because she is a fantastic woman, but he would literally bulldoze over anything to be with her, to make her fall in love with him. And he does, because she does have a boyfriend in this book. So these two first met in college a decade ago. They were in the same class and worked on the same project. There were a lot of feelings between them back then, but then Jared did something that made Banner believe that he betrayed her. And then throughout the next 10 years, these two went on to be these really successful sports agents. And now in present day, they are forced to be in a lot closer proximity than they ever have been. And this is when Jared realizes that this is his second chance with Banner, and he is not gonna let anything stop him being with her, and her having a boyfriend is definitely not gonna stop him. Of all the books and heroes that I've read from Kennedy Ryan, Jared is 100% her most obsessive and possessive hero that I've read so far. He has a single-minded need to possess Banner because she's that incredible, and he knows that she is his perfect match. I loved how much these two were such a power couple. Like, individually they're great, but when they're together they are the definition of power couple. There's just so much brilliant chemistry and banter between them. I mean, Kennedy Ryan's writing is fantastic as always, and there was some good angst with the whole cheating aspect too. As soon as I read it, it just instantly became one of my new favorites from Kennedy Ryan. It's not a favorites list of mine without a reverse harem on it, and this next one is the St. View High series by L. Thorpe, which is a high school reverse harem romance series. I know 2 of the books slash series on this list are like high school-ish, which is very surprising for me, but this one blew me away. I was genuinely shocked by how much I enjoyed this one when I read the first book. I didn't expect to love it. It's set in high school and it's a bully romance, or at least that was what the title said. So those were 2 things that were going against it for me, but then I realized that it was reverse harem and the heroine's name has my name, so I was like, okay, maybe I should give it more of a chance, and I am so glad that I did because I really like this series. So it's a 3-book series. Book 1 is Devious Little Liars, book 2 is Dangerous Little Secrets, and book 3 is Twisted Little Truths. It was such a fun and hot series. Usually I avoid high school romances because I typically find like the characters and the decisions that they make that are in high school romances to be really dumb and annoying, but I didn't feel that way at all reading the series. I genuinely liked our main characters. So the heroine's name is Lacey, and she comes from a very wealthy family and from a very wealthy town. Tragically, her uncle passes away, the uncle who raised her along with her aunt, and Lacey comes to find out that there might have been a little bit more to her uncle's death, like he might have actually been murdered. And the only clue that she has is this St. View High sweater, and she goes to enroll herself in this public school in this very poor town. She does connect with 2 of her classmates though, Banjo and Rafe, who are best friends, along with a 3rd guy named Colt, but Colt is not a fan of Lacey's at all. Generally in reverse harem romances, there's always gotta be that jerk in the reverse harem, and Colt is the guy. So it's enemies to lovers between Colt and Lacey, but Banjo and Rafe are pretty much all in. I loved our 3 guys. I loved how they grew to be so protective over Lacey, and it was great seeing how each guy brought something a little different to their relationship. The suspense was well done, with Lacey trying to find out who murdered her uncle. It moved at a pretty good pace. Like, I don't think anything dragged, and I wasn't really bored at all. And of course the steam was great. I mean, they're all over 18, so it's fine. Like, each book in the series does get hotter and hotter, which is great. I'm honestly just really impressed that this new to me author, who I never read before, made me fall in love with a high school romance. So I do have to give huge props to L. Thorpe for that. If you're like me and you don't really like high school romances, I mean, give this one a try. You might be surprised like I was. It's like the perfect combination of fun and hot and suspenseful. Next on my list is Always Been You by QB Tyler. This is a forbidden taboo romance. It was originally a novella that she edited to become a full-length book. It's a forbidden romance between adopted siblings, and since it's QB Tyler, it is very steamy. So if you love anything forbidden or taboo, you need to read this book. Gabrielle, the heroine, was adopted into the Calloway family at age age 2, and she pretty much fit in instantly, and that was because of our hero James. He is her adopted parents' biological son, so Gabrielle and James are not related, but they are adopted siblings, and they form this instant connection even though he's 11 years older than her. They become best friends growing up, and they're still best friends now, even as adults, even 16 years later. So Gabrielle is 18 when things start to happen, but she has always had these feelings for James that weren't always sibling related. And even though they're best friends and they've always been able to tell each other anything, they can't exactly tell each other that they are in lust and in love with each other. Even though it's not a novella anymore, it is still a pretty quick and easy read because James and Gabrielle are pretty much already in love with each other at the beginning of the book. The story is more them dealing with this forbidden love, like how they can possibly go public with it, how they can possibly tell their parents about it, because even though they're not related, they still are considered adopted siblings. It gets angsty and crazy hot. I mean, when I read Kiwi Tyler, I know I can count on her to deliver some good steam, and she did. She delivered all that and then some. The taboo aspect of the romance definitely amped up the chemistry for me, and I had a really great time reading it. I mean, I got exactly what I wanted, which was a fast-paced and kinky romance. Next on my list is Darling Venom by Parker S. Huntington, and look at this pretty special edition that I also got. This is a very popular book that actually lived up to the hype for me. It was my second time reading Parker S. Huntington, and it was a huge improvement from the debut that I read. If you love slow burn romances and if you love long books, I mean, I know it doesn't look that long in paperback, but I'm pretty sure my ebook said it was over 500 pages. So if you're a fan of slow burn and longer books, this one is going to be perfect for you. It's a noodle romance. It's an intense emotional read that had me hooked onto the pages. The romance does take its time to develop though. It is slow burn because there's just so much going on outside of the romance. The romance also has a bit of a forbidden element to it because Charlotte, the heroine, she was best friends with Kellen, who is our hero Tate's younger brother. Charlotte and Kellen were sort of best friends back in high school until Kellen's tragic death. So both our main characters are still dealing with this grief, dealing with Kellen's loss even years later, now that Charlotte is in her early 20s and Tate is around 30. They're both unable to move on from his death, especially Tate, who pretty much became Kellen's father figure. Tate had to take Kellen in when he himself was really young because of their deadbeat dad. The pacing of not just the romance but the story too is extremely slow, but I will say it worked for these characters. After Kellen's death, Tate is sort of in this depressive and self-destructive state. He's a gynecologist, which I thought was pretty interesting, and this is a reason why Charlotte is able to enter his life because, I mean, he's not her gynecologist, but he is her boss's. Charlotte works at this literary agency and she's trying to book an appointment with Tate for her boss, and Tate is like the biggest jerk. She recognizes who he is though, and she annoys him into letting her stick around because she can clearly see how broken Tate is, how he's unable to deal with Kellen's death. And then she gets the perfect excuse to stay in Tate's life because they end up finding a manuscript of Kellen's before his death, and he left a note saying that he wanted Charlotte to have it for her to be the book's editor. And since she's a literary agent, this is like the perfect opportunity to publish Kellen's book. The romance between Tate and Charlotte takes its very sweet time to develop. They both need time to deal with their heartbreak and grief and emotions while also slowly opening themselves to love. I thought the character development and growth was really well written, especially for Tate, because I really did not like his character in the beginning, but then I fell so hard for him by the end of the book. So Darling Venom, it's a crazy roller coaster of emotions, and if you love your romances with broken characters, you will enjoy this one. I had to include a recent Jessica Kane novella. This is Truck Driver. I really like this one. I mean, her recent books have been very hit or miss for me, mostly misses, but this one works so well for me. I really like Truck Driver. It's about a hero who's been tasked with trafficking the heroine, but as soon as he sees her photo, he knows he has to save her and possess her because he's a Jessica Kane hero. The heroine works at a diner and he pretends to be a truck driver who's stopping by for a meal. This is his in with her, and all he wants to do is basically protect her and have her. It's classic Jessica Kane, so very, very steamy, but also it's nothing too crazy or over the top. Sometimes Jessica Kane can go a little bit too far with her stories in a very uncomfortable way way, but this one was really sweet, especially for a Jessica K novella. And the reason why is because the heroine is so adorable. They were just really cute and hot together, which I don't really see that often with Jessica Kane, but when I do, I always appreciate it. So if you're wondering which of Jessica Kane's many novellas to read, especially from her recent ones, Truck Driver is a good place to start. Also on my list is Kingdom Fall by A. Zaffarelli. This was actually my very first read of 2022 and it was a really good one. It's a dark mafia romance that gets intense and angsty, and I really love the romance here. The hero Alessio is known as the debt collector, so he's the guy that the mafia hires to torture people to get information from them. He's also a single father who needs a new nanny for his young son who he does love but struggles to connect with. He ends up hiring Natalia, who is the mute heroine, and she instantly connects with Alessio's son, so that's the reason why Alessio decides to keep her, even knowing that she does hide some dark secrets. Natalia and Alessio were so good together. I love the chemistry between them. He's like this cold, stoic alpha man, and she's the only one who's able to stand up to him even though she can't talk, and she pretty much thaws that coldness out of him. She just makes him feel, and I loved that Natalia became the bridge between Alessio and his son. So in addition to the romance, we get to see this father-son bond grow, which was so heartwarming. There were also quite a few twists here. It gets almost romantic suspensey. It gets dark and tragic with Natalia's backstory, and all the secrets did keep me on the edge of my seat. If you're looking for a good standalone mafia romance, I highly recommend it. I also liked the unique mafia setup to this too. Alessio is known as like a mafia prince. He's part of mafia royalty, and he's part of this super exclusive club, so I would love to read more of this world. I'm pretty sure we're getting more, and there was a side couple that was talked about in this book too, so hopefully we get them. Next is Feral Sins by Suzanne Wright. This one is not just on KU, but you can also listen to the audio on KU. I read this one a month or so ago, and it was actually my second time reading it because I totally forgot the first time that I read it. I originally gave it 3 stars, but then I had to bump it up to 4 solely because of how hot it was. I don't know how I didn't appreciate all the steam that was in this book the first time that I read it, but I definitely appreciate it the second time around. So this is a paranormal romance, a wolf shifter romance. The heroine Taryn, she is a latent shifter, which means that she is unable to physically shift into her wolf. She's a very tough girl kind of heroine. She's very stubborn and speaks her mind, and she's had to be because of her awful family. Trey is our hero, who is the alpha of another pack, and he lost his mate when he was really young. Actually, both of them lost their mates when they were young. Trey and Taryn eventually meet, and they are both crazy alpha, so anytime they're in the room together, it gets to be a lot. They constantly go head to head, and they do end up making a deal together. She'll pretend that he is her true mate, and he'll save her from an unwanted mating. They try to keep it professional and everything, but then sex gets involved because of how animalistic the mating claiming makes them. So it gets super hot and heavy, which was great to read. And then of course real feelings start to get involved, even though Trey tries to pretend otherwise in his annoying alpha hero way. But man, this theme was so good. It's literally the reason why I enjoyed this book so much. I mean, yes, I did like the main characters, even though they were a little bit over the top with their alphaness. But overall, it was a great, fun, smutty paranormal romance. I've got another popular author and book on my list. I mean, I generally enjoy her books, so I wasn't surprised that I like this one. It is Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. This one is her newest release, and I will say I was a little scared going into it because I was afraid it was going to be more women's fiction like her recent books. Like her last few releases, especially the ones with Montlake, they've kind of straddled the women's fiction slash romance line, which isn't like the worst thing, but also not my favorite thing to read either. And while this one does, it still had a good romance, even though it very much wasn't the focus of the story. So this one is another one that you can listen to in audio through KU, and that's how I read it, and the narrators did an incredible job. They really brought this story to life, especially the voice for Kenna. She was able to bring so much emotion and heartbreak into Kenna's voice. The story itself is depressing in Colleen Hoover's usual way. The heroine Kenna, she went to prison for the involuntary manslaughter of her boyfriend and the father of her unborn child. She gives birth to their daughter in prison, who is then taken in by her late boyfriend's parents. And then 4 years later, she's finally released, and Kenna wants nothing more than to be with her daughter. Like, she's never even been able to hold her baby, but she wants the chance to be in her daughter's life. The situation though for everyone involved it just sucks all around. Like, you understand Kenna's point of view because all she wants to do is be a mother to her child, but then you also understand the grandparents' point of view because Kenna is literally the tragic reason why their son died. And then Ledger, our hero, is Scotty's best friend who also kind of took care of Kenna's daughter while she was in prison. He's the only one who seems to want to give Kenna a chance, a second chance, so he is very, very torn between her and the grandparents. I like these two together. I thought they were really sweet. I mean, they're not like a new top favorite couple of mine from Colleen Hoover, but they were nice to read about. But the romance was not the highlight of this book for me. I was definitely more here for the writing and for the storytelling, and I was just waiting to see how things would resolve at the end, if it could even possibly resolve. So this book had me feeling so many emotions. I was like super frustrated in one moment and then heartbroken the next. I did actually tear up at the end of this book, so I do have to give props to Colleen Hoover for that. She's been able to make me cry multiple times from her books, and I almost never cry when I read books. It's a solid book though. I really liked it. It's a great story about love and forgiveness and healing. My next recommendation is Southern Storms by Brittany C. Cherry. This is the first book in the Compass series, and it's set in this small town, and it's got two very broken characters. Both of them are suffering from loss in their own ways, and it gets a little depressing, but if you've read Brittany C. Cherry before, you know that this is kind of her thing. The hero, Jax, is the town's outcast. He keeps to himself, and he's also very, very rude when the heroine first meets him. He's a kind of hero who is a jerk to anyone who tries to get close to him because he doesn't want anyone close to him. Kennedy, the heroine, has just moved into town. She wanted to build a new life for herself after leaving her neglectful husband and after so many miscarriages. Jax and Kennedy have a very rocky start to their relationship, mainly because of Jax, who is very mean to her in their first meeting. They eventually become friends as they connect over their shared losses, and then the romance, it's kind of a slow burn. It is pretty straightforward for a small town romance. Like, you get that cozy community and also get the annoying and judgy neighbors. The book has what you pretty much expect in a small town romance, so that was good. I was surprised by how much I enjoy Jax's character, especially after the rough beginning, because I usually can't stand Brittany C. Cherry's jerk heroes. You do get to see a whole other side to him pretty early on in the book, where he's really sweet and protective over certain people in town. There's also this really cute childhood best friends aspect to the story that I liked reading, but overall it was a great small town romance. And then the last book on my list is an enemies to lovers romance. It's Twisted Hate by Anna Huang. I have kind of been up and down with this Twisted series. Like, I really liked book 1, book 2 was disappointing, but then I went back up and really enjoyed Twisted Hate. It's the third standalone in the series, though the couple here was first introduced in book 1. It might be my new favorite of the series. I'm still trying to decide if I liked book 1 or book 3 better, but it was a really good enemies to lovers and best friends brother romance. So if you read the series in order, then you know how much Josh and Jules absolutely hate each other. They've hated each other since basically when they first met, and now that we get their own book, the chemistry is insane here because of some good forced proximity. Jules is a lawyer and Josh is a doctor, and they're both forced to work together and make nice at a clinic that they volunteer at. There's a ton of good animosity and tension between these two. They constantly say mean things to each other, though Josh sometimes does go a little bit too far with that, but that just means he has to grovel, which I won't complain about. Eventually they do fall into bed together for some great hate sex. They form this enemies with benefits relationship. The steam is crazy hot, and it does get a little angsty at the end because, again, the groveling from Josh. I know a lot of people don't like third act breakups in their romances, but I kind of love them, mainly because of the angst that they bring into the story, and I also love seeing the main characters fighting for each other. So I really like the third act breakup that happened in this book, though I feel like more people feel the opposite. Also, I'm pretty picky and judgy when it comes to enemies to lovers romances, but this one worked great for me. So that is it for my list of some recent favorite reads that are available on KU. I think there are 11 of them if I counted correctly. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and of course let me know your thoughts if you have read any of these books that I listed. All the books will be linked down in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!